All right, one of the questions was on what type of ossification occurs with flat bones, which is Intramembranous Ossification. All right, so the other type is Endochondrial Ossification. Each of these have a different starting point. Okay, for Intramembranous Ossification, we have mesenchymal cells, okay, which we're going to define as these little black ones. Okay, and mesenchyme is a precursor to connective tissue. So mesenchyme can become lots of different things. In this instance, mesenchymal cells develop into osteoblasts, okay, which will make these yellow cells. Okay, so now they're osteoblasts. What do osteoblasts do? Okay, they grow new bone, right? So the next step is our osteoblasts secrete osteoid. Okay, so this mesenchymal tissue is going to be replaced by our bony matrix of osteoid. But then once they're surrounded by osteoid, what happens? Right, they mature into osteocytes. So now they're all osteocytes. So our mesenchymal cells become osteoblasts. Our osteoblasts become osteocytes. All right, so this is what's happening at the cellular level. But we need to zoom out then. Okay, and what we have here is where the bone is being laid. We've got blood vessels. We'll just have them run off the page. And so this bone that is forming from the mesenchyme is creating this woven bone, right? So it looks like our trabeculae, and that's what it's forming. Okay, but there's what my woven bone looks like. So the woven bone forms around these blood vessels, and you have periosteum forming on the outside. All right, but we have woven bone, we have our trabeculae, but we don't have all the bone types formed yet, right? So our last thing that happens is the compact bone forms under the periosteum. So you get a layer of compact bone here, a layer of compact bone here. And our spongy bone matures from the woven bone. Okay, essentially just gets thicker. And red bone marrow fills in those spaces. Yeah.
Are those red and blue ones you drew at first, are those just blood vessels?
Right, so the blood vessels are there first, and then the bone cells form around them and then create the woven bone. There's still blood supply there, but yes.
Does this kind of bone formation happen in adults or is it mostly in?
Yeah, this is so as the bones are forming from, there is some of this going on as you develop from a baby to adolescence, but most of it happens initially in the womb, in utero. Yeah. Yeah, so this is original bone formation. Okay, mostly.
This isn't like the changing of bone shape later?
No, yeah. So after this bone has formed, it will change shape as it grows. Okay, but that's just cells here and there kind of growing and expanding. But yeah, you don't have flat bones maturing later in life. Yeah. So intramembranous ossification occurs with flat and irregular bones. And it's relatively simple. I know that if you look at the figure in the book, it seems like what the heck is going on here. But if you just remember, the first two pictures are microscopic, right? So what's going on the cellular level? The next two steps are what you can see, macroscopic. Then I think it makes a lot more sense. Well, other bone types form from endochondrial ossification. Long bones and short bones. That's a good question. I can't remember, but I think it is the other one. It's in your notes. All right, but endochondrial means within cartilage. So anytime you see the precursor COND, chondro, that's referring to cartilage. And the cartilage cells follow the same nomenclature as the bone cells. So a chondrocyte is a mature cartilage cell. Chondroblast is a cell that's making cartilage matrix, yes. Okay, but we start with a cartilaginous hyaline cartilage scaffold of our bone filled with chondrocytes. All right, our second step, the perichondrium then. We've seen that with periosteum. So where was the periosteum? The outside. So the perichondrium is the thicker outer layer.
So peri versus outside.
Mm-hmm. Think periphery. Peri. Okay. Our second step, though, is we have a bony collar forming. Okay, so our first appearance of bone is at the bony collar.
So the way you've done it is dissected that way, but it would be all the way around the bone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, let's go all the way around. But yeah, we're looking at a bilateral section. Okay, these chondrocytes will then mature and die. And they form a space in the middle of the bone. Okay, so these guys in the middle. Make an open space. So now that there's space there, what happens is blood supply will reach that opened inner part and form what's called the periosteal bud. And that forms I'm going to put 1 degree, which stands for primary ossification center. So what happens is you get spongy bone forming in here. All right, the next step is you get more blood supply going to the ends, and you get secondary ossification centers. And more spongy bone. Now, after you have these you have blood supply, you have bone cells making bone. Now bone remodeling can take place, and your medullary cavity will form. With compact bone. And then that will fill with yellow bone marrow. Your epiphyses will form with red bone marrow. And all that remains of the cartilage will be the epiphyseal line. Okay? So I guess we'll draw that to the side here, but pretty much everything at this point will be bone. We'll have compact bone in here, forming our medullary cavity. Have spongy bone up here in the epiphysis, and hyaline cartilage at the epiphyseal line. And now it's mature bone. But it can still grow because it has that cartilaginous area where it can add more cartilage on this end and replace that cartilage with bone on this end. And then bone remodeling can reshape the bone as it grows as well. All right, so this one's a little more complex than intramembranous ossification. But if it follows, a logical step of events. So go through this, make sure you know it from beginning to end. All right, any questions? Yes.
So the bone that we're looking at here, that's like the entire bone, right? That's not like a cross section or anything.
Yeah.
Just like that.
It starts out, so again, this is when bones are forming. So it's going to start out really small as a cartilaginous little precursor bone, and then it's going to grow as it ossifies, and then it'll
So
continue
this
to
would,
grow.
for example, be like a developing femur bone.
Right. Yeah, so if it was a developing femur bone, it would also have another secondary ossification center here. Some, like short bones, they don't have epiphyses. They would not have secondary ossification centers. So they would just have the middle part. Some bones only have one, and some have two. Yeah.
Is there another Periosteal Bud at the second ossification center?
Yeah. Yeah. So the blood going in there is another periosteal bud forming, which has to occur before the bone. Yeah.
Just review the
Epiphyses, yeah.
Contains red bone marrow.
Right.
And the body of it contains yellow bone.
Right. So this will fill with red bone marrow.
But are you drawing it as yellow first, or it starts out? Is that just spongy bone? Is that the yellow?
Yep. Spongy bone, and this is,
I see.
I don't have another yellow,
Oh, that's fine.
but yeah.
Right.
Yellow bone marrow in there. Yeah.
Like at what stage of human development does this occur? Is this like pre-birth?
Yeah, this is pre-birth as well. There is some of this that occurs after birth as well, and including intramembranous as well. So, for example, the soft spots on babies' heads, that is intramembranous ossification that hasn't fully developed. So there still has some intramembranous ossification occurring there. Okay, so we're going to zoom into that line, talk about the zones of cartilage that occur. Okay, so they're going through growth in a specific direction. The first is the reserve zone. And so this is just mature cartilage, hyaline. And from there you have then the proliferative zone. Where mitosis is occurring. So these cells drawing from there as it grows will go through mitosis. They're chondrocytes. So these are cartilaginous cells. This is all occurring at the epiphyseal line. Okay, and then we have a period of hypertrophy where they are enlarging. Then we have a zone of calcification where they are dying, essentially. Which is called apoptosis or apoptosis. It's really sad. But don't worry, because the death of a chondrocyte is the birth of an osteocyte, right? So the zone of ossification then is where the bone is able to replace the dying cartilaginous cells, chondrocytes. Okay, so this is going to grow in this direction as new bone is laid out when you have this bone as a reference over here. This bone's going to continually build as these zones kind of move on to the next stage. These ones will start going through mitosis. The other one will have mature hyaline cartilage added onto that, and so on and so forth. Those are, that's blood supply. Yeah, so. All right.
Sorry, real quick. So the top is the surface of the bone, right?
So this would be the epiphysis.
Is it
Right,
like-
above it would be spongy bone, right? And then below it would be the compact hollow shaft of the bone.
Thank you.
So Dr. Britt, just remembering where it is this like near it, so this is at the epiphyseal plate, right?
Right, so it's going to be Muted the whole time. So these, just to review, because I wasn't recording, hematoma forms. What cells are going to be important at the hematoma? We talked about a couple of them. Okay, you're going to have red blood cells, white blood cells. Okay, what cells are going to be important for the callus? Okay, you'll have, well, the bony callus, yes. Right, chondroblasts. They're going to make the cartilage in there. All right. The bone healing and remodeling then. What's important here? Osteoblasts, osteoclasts, and in the totally healed bone, osteocytes, right? All right, these will also be important in forming that bony callus as well. And we'll add chondrocytes here as well. Chondroblasts will initially secrete the matrix and then they'll mature into chondrocytes. Yes?
This might be a dumb question, but you say that hematoma forms like when you get a goose egg or something else
Mhm.
anywhere else on your body. In a case where it's like just from like somewhere you got hit or something, that's the only step that happens. There's none like the rest.
Right, yeah. So if there's no bone break, then you don't.
Then it doesn't go past just the hematoma.
Right. So it's just a matter of inflammation. What allows that swelling to occur, though, is your areolar tissue and your epithelium, which allows for fluid to accumulate there. What's that?
Isn't areola spelled A-E? No? The half point?
No. Okay, we've got one more thing. Distraction osteogenesis. All right, 3 steps. First one is corticotomy. Okay, so where you have this bone, you're going to cut it. And you're going to separate it. Oops. Just a little bit, so there's a little bit of space there. And the second step is then you're going to have the spongy bone is going to fill the gap. And then you'll get full mature bone tissue healing and remodeling in that area. So this procedure allows for bone lengthening, including if you want to get taller. Okay, so we're going to watch this video and then we'll be done.
Does this occur naturally or only as like
This is a medical procedure. It does not occur naturally. Well, the healing process occurs naturally, but breaking your bones and then pulling them apart.
Become 3 inches taller. This is leg lengthening surgery, and it's excruciatingly painful. The procedure takes 9 months, 4 months for lengthening, and 5 months for recovering. Lengthening means the shin bones are broken. Then the fractured bone pieces are pulled apart by 1/4 millimeter at a time, 4 times a day. The body then tries to heal and make new bone to fill in the gaps. This is how the patient becomes taller.
That's not what they do. They don't break it
While
like that.
recovering, a patient in Russia witnessed his legs swell and almost double in size. Patients often walk with a walker. In Russia, the cost of the procedure is around $16,000.
That's only $50.
In the United
70.
States, in Russia, patients are likely to first be